Okay, my name is Karsten and I want to talk about SeaBreeze. I work for Georg, probably know him, and this is a project that I've been working on for the last couple of months. Before I get started with SeaBreeze, let's talk a bit about the history. 7 years ago, I learned Smalltalk. This was in my first semester at Untitled University, and I had lectures with Georg. And in his first lesson, he actually said everything is an object, and like numbers are objects, and files, dictionaries, and everything. Even here, is an object. And I was like, oh, wait, isn't that some data structural thing? No, they're objects, and everything works pretty fine. Several years ago, several years later, there was ESUG. Anyone been there? Too many. This is when I started my internship in this company, and what I had to do was to transfer an existing web application called WebTCM. This is a translation content management for websites where translators can translate parts of the website. And it was done in Web Toolkit using SSP pages. And Europe and his company, they developed Visual Bach. And I had to port this application to Visual Bach because you should eat your own dog food. And these SSP pages, they are files with some HTML inside and some Smalltalk mixed in. And the server takes these pages, converts them into Smalltalk with text between, and if you run these methods, you get HTML. In Visual Bach, this is also possible. You can use SSP templates. You probably have to use a little bit of different Smalltalk, but the principle is the same. And you could also use the page view API. This is like in Seaside, where you can just write methods that create HTML. Then I came to the Bach Project, where we had tons of data, and you just needed to have a way to look at all the data, and I had to create a web front end, and we used Seaside, and for the backend we used Gemstone, and we found it. Actually, there are reports that you can have at the end of the presentation if you want. In Seaside, you get methods like this. You get lots of code, and this is a little snippet that creates a table row with 2 data fields inside. And you need some seconds to understand what it creates, and you don't know the context where this is put in. And it's hard to change the structure, like, well, there shouldn't be a table, maybe you just want HTML that has a heading and paragraph, I don't know. So, this is what we had. The SSP pages is basically a string of characters. Visual Bach is either a string of characters or a sequence of method sends, and Seaside is only a sequence of method sends in terms of creating HTML. During the Bach project, we also had these huge amounts of data, and these were books or articles scanned in and processed with some OCR software and put into Word documents. And we had to import these documents into the database, and we came up with a structure like this where you have a document, paragraphs, sentences, and words. And if you want to browse these documents on the internet, you have to render these in minutes. And if you have a sentence like this, this is from some old book, and Lauch is the name of some rich person in Köln several hundred years ago. You could render this into a span. But if you were looking for this person by searching for it, you could also highlight this search term by rendering this one node differently. So rendering these objects can also be done for HTML objects, because HTML is basically also just a tree. In SeaBreeze, everything is an object. Every HTML element is an object, the body is an object, the image is an object, text is an object, everything. This is all done by the class SBElement, which is the superclass of all the things that can render HTML with Seaside. And the subclass, for example, is the div element or container element. The div element is just what the name says, it renders a div. The container element is something special, and it just does not only render HTML. And it doesn't map to an HTML tag. So the normal HTML elements, for example, div, span, image, and table, this is what we have in SeaBreeze and that you can use to compose your website. And they represent the HTML tags one by one. But we also have non-HTML elements like a collection container, a conditional element that just renders HTML based on some condition. And if this condition is false, it just doesn't render nothing. You get chart elements like Google Charts or some JavaScript library that renders nice charts like Plotkit or something. You can have a YouTube element that just takes a YouTube URL and puts all of the HTML stuff on the website, and you don't have to care about anything. Or composite elements that consist of plenty of HTML, like tabs or whatever. So the SB element, it knows about the HTML properties of a tag, like if you got an anchor, you got the reference where it's pointing to, or the help text, the IDs, CSS class, all that stuff. It knows about the HTML structure, like if I am a div, I can contain anything. If I am a span, I can contain text, but nothing more. And if you use Seaside, of course you can use a span and create a div inside. No one will notice, but the browser will just do strange stuff. It also knows CSS properties, and it knows how to render itself on HTML into HTML. So the CSS properties are like the position or the border, all that stuff, the dimensions. You can all specify that in objects, and it is rendered accordingly. The collection containers that I mentioned before, they take a collection of objects, they have a prototype like the green thing in the middle. You say you want to print the name in the top left, underneath you want to print the age, and then you got the city, and in the right corner you want to display the photo of this person. And then you got a collection of persons, and the prototype is copied for each object and just rendered with the object that represents. So you got a collection of persons rendered as HTML. You also got an editor element, for example, that can edit any object. You say, just take this, just call this method, and the object that gets back from this method, create an editor for this, and display it on the internet. So for strings, we got a string editor. For date, we got a calendar. Or for colors, we got a color picker. And this color picker is done using Scriptaculous. So it requires the Scriptaculous file library. Who of you has ever forgotten to add a file library and then nothing happened? Anyone? I did. Often. So the Scriptaculous file library is an object, and the color picker is also an object, and it knows that it requires the Scriptaculous library. So it can just include this file library. And Scriptaculous requires prototype, so it is also added in the right direction, in the right order. So it all works in the end. Yeah. Okay, so the application model is what is required as a component, because you cannot just add the elements to any component. And it knows which objects to create and what to do with these objects. Like, it has a window spec that contains all the information, and the window spec is basically a literal array that contains literal array representations of the elements. And you see the literal objects, they just represent themselves. Like the simple span is just a symbol, and the text is just a text. But if you have a complex object, It's represented as a literal array with a slar tag at the beginning, and then the class name, and then all the properties. And if you want to convert an object into such a literal array, you need to implement a method that says I have these properties, and then these properties are also put there. To create SeaBreeze websites, you can use the web painter. This is how it looks like. It has the editor on the left side, and on the top we got a toolbar, and the big part is the preview area. This is a palette where you can select which objects you want to add to the web page, and they are grouped, and there are plenty of elements. The elements know the structure, so if you want to add a div inside a span, this is not possible and it will not be put inside, because we got objects and they know this stuff. And yeah, if you don't use these objects, you can do this, but the web browser will probably complain. Same goes for forms. If you have a body element and you just want to add the input field, then nothing happens if you do this with Seaside or with anything else, because you don't have a form around it. Anyone done that already? Yeah. And in SeaBreeze, the input element, it knows I need a form, so I create a form around me if there is no form. So the input actually works even if you don't know much about HTML. So we also got a tree for all the elements, so you can see the structure, and you can see what kind of object it is. There is a little icon, and this color beach ball behind it. This is to tell you that there is CSS properties set to the object directly and not in the CSS file. And you can rearrange objects and everything. You can also use the search field to filter for some element to find it faster. To change the structure, you just pick it and rearrange the tree, and that's it. That's it. There's no more to it. I mean, in Seaside, it is a bit more difficult. The toolbar, you got things like save, undo, and redo. You can undo all the operations that you did in Seaside. You can delete objects, you can change the selection mode to select multiple objects. You can embed, extract, and duplicate an element. Embedding is like you select an object and you say, I got a text and I want this to be a link, so you click the text, go to embed, and then you say, let's take the anchor, and it's put into anchor. This also knows the structure of HTML, so if you want, if you have a div, you can put the div into a new div, but not into a span, for example. The span will not be listed. You can also duplicate elements. Just select them, click duplicate, and they are duplicated. You can extract a component, like, I don't know, you have created like a prototype of the website, and you say, well, this is like the menu, and I want this menu to be an extra component. You select the div and you say extract. You tell it which class name to create, and then it creates a class, puts the div inside this class, and creates an instance variable that contains the instance of this class and links everything, so it just looks as before, but it's not a div anymore, it's a subcomponent that contains this div. You can also edit the elements in the editor, like giving them an ID, a class name, stuff like that, an aspect in this case. The preview area is actually the wizard that can create a new application. It's opened in the editor, and you can see the application name is selected. You got a dash line around. If you hover over an element, you will see the right border and the name of this element that you're going to select, and you can rearrange the objects if you like. SeaBreeze also supports JavaScript, and because everything is an object, JavaScript is also an object here. In Seaside, you had to use updaters if you want to update a certain element. You have to know which element to update in the time when you compile this method. So in this case, you have the element to update, and you have to know now which element you want to update. In SeaBreeze, the updater is actually an object, and you tell it, please update the element text. If you have a structure like on the right side, you have a div, called wrapper in this case, you have a span called text, and if you click on the span, the button clicked method will be called, and it will set the new text, and then it will call update the element text, and the new text will appear on the website, and that's it. And you specify which element you want to update at runtime, which is much more convenient, I think. This works because these Ajax objects are notifications, and the Ajax request comes in, there's a handler that handles these notifications, and it writes JavaScript back to the stream, and then the browser gets this answer and then executes all these updated and JavaScripts that got back from the server and displays them on the browser. So we got notifications to update an element, to change the SeaBreeze element and then update it. You can trigger effects or display a progress bar or do a normal callback. This is like, yeah, I'm in an Ajax callback and I want to call a new component. And you do this as normal callback and it will just work. So how do you use Ajax? In the form, you just toggle the checkbox, use Ajax, and the anchor is likewise. So you just have to check a checkbox and that's it. It will use Ajax. Yeah. Web velocity. From Syncom, you probably saw the presentation this morning. It was pretty good. There you got objects and the views are created for you with scaffolding. So you got a person and you got a person this UI, a view UI and an edit UI. If you want to customize the look of these UIs, you have to use convention to render object, render name on, I don't know. And in SeaBreeze we just take the objects and we scaffold the objects. We scaffold the elements. They look exactly the same, so the scenes are looking the same. And if you open it in the editor, you see the same that you saw before. You can just change the way that these objects are displayed. We also got HTML import. So if you have an HTML website, you can parse this website. You got a render tree, and then you already got HTML objects. You just need to transform them into SeaBreeze elements, and that is currently supported. We also got an InDesign import, which my colleague Roland talked about 2 hours before, and it takes the InDesign document, parses it, and creates an SeaBreeze elements out of these parse tree. We also support Object Studio, so you can have an Object Studio form. We're currently working on it. It's not yet finished, but the idea is that you have the Object Studio UI, the objects, and they are converted to SeaBreeze elements and present that on the web. So basically you can have application X, and this has a tree of objects, and they are converted to SeaBreeze elements. You can also export HTML websites. This is done through the InDesign importer. So you got the structure and it just renders out. Currently we support VisualWorks 7.6 with Seaside 2.8 and VisualWorks 7.7 with Seaside 3.0. Same goes for Object Studio 8.2. For Squeak and Faro, there has work been done. It works basically, but it still needs volunteers that do some more work, because there is some platform-specific stuff in SeaBreeze that needs to be ported to Squeak, and well, there are not so many people in our company that know much about Squeak or Pharo. And for VA Smalltalk, we did a feasibility study if it's doable or not, and I think it's doable. The license is still MIT license for SeaBreeze. We got a Pro version which got the import and export feature, and it got support. And we also got this InDesign import, which is called GH Print to Web, which can be used to convert these InDesign documents to HTML. Okay, that's it. Thanks a lot for your attention. Are there any questions? Yes.
Just for components, like you create components. Just for components that you could reuse.
Yeah, these application models are components, so you can use these components in other components or something. Yeah, please.
So when I reuse or when I start a class component to specialize it, does it appear in the web editor too?
A component or an element.
Element. Sorry, element.
Yes, you can. Hang on. I think I got this somewhere. There it is. Underneath the CSS class, you can choose which class you want to take, and it will list all the subclasses of this system class. So if you subclass SPA text element, it will be available there. Okay, so you create a superclass by clicking on its icon, and then you change its class. Okay. Thank you. Yes.
Are those sites deployed which have been built using SeaBreeze, or are any in progress?
Our website, seabreeze.de, is done with SeaBreeze some time ago, and I think that's all. Yeah, no, we also got a picture gallery that we created for some websites that the web designers in our company are maintaining, and the result is pretty satisfying. These web designers are really glad about this, and the people that have the website they also have. Any more questions? Oh, got time. I can do demo if you want. Yeah.
Is HTML5 supported, or plan to be supported?
Pardon?
HTML5, is that supposed to be supported with the canvas element and stuff like that?
SeaBreeze is based on Seaside, so Seaside supports HTML5. We can also support it. Okay. Let me give a demo. Okay, so you've got a VisualWorks image, and this is what you see when you download SeaBreeze. Install it. There is a different browser than the Seaside Classic browser. It only lists the SeaBreeze applications that are on your system. So let's create a new application. Let's call it ESUG application. Test for the ESUG. It will automatically create a component class and the namespace and everything, and you can change its values if you want to. You can also select the template. Click on create. It will create all this stuff. Take a while. Okay. Let's see. This is test. There it is. So here we got the component, ESUG application, we got the namespace, and we got the file library. And this file library is already automatically included. Let's say we want, let's do the calculator. Let's say we have an anchor which does increment. This red arrow here, it means the method is not present in the application model. So if I click it, it will create the method and open the refactoring browser on this method. I can say number plus 1. We don't have a number yet. So if we increment it, the number will be incremented. And let's say plus. Let's add a text. And the text will not have a static text, but it will access an aspect called number. And you see the arrow is red, blue, black, because I already created this method in the application model. Do we need anything else? No. Save it. Exit. And you see the application is now listed. And you see no number because it's not initialized. And now we have it. Yeah, of course. Okay, let's initialize. Oh. I'm a bit confused. Okay, now we got 0. So if we increment it, it's working. We could also say this number does not belong into the anchor, and we can rearrange it, and now it's before and not inside the anchor. We save it. You see the number is no link anymore. The rest is still working. Okay, let's say this anchor should actually use Ajax, so we just check the checkbox, click OK, exit, save. And you see nothing's working. But I guess if I that's the file. So you see the posts are created. The problem is that I don't see anything. It's probably because it's Seaside 3.0 and it doesn't create JavaScript do nothing big anymore. So if we say well, if there is a URL, it will also display it as a link. Anyway, the events are sent and the method is called in the application model, but you don't see anything because this is not updated. It only tells the application to increment. If we have breakpoint here, you can see that it actually calls this method. So if we debug into it, okay. If we go into set number, let's say if the number is set, we want to update the number element. So we say SB update element. No, update element with ID here. Number text. Accept and go. Okay, if we look at here, let's see, we increment, and we got an answer. It is. Oh yeah, right. Okay, so if you want to update an element, you actually cannot update the element itself. You only can tell its parent to update its content. So if you have a div called test, you can only render the content of this div and not the div itself. So if we have a text field like this, and we have to call it number text. Otherwise, it would not be found. There is no parent for this element, so you cannot tell an object to update its content. So if we select this element and we use multi-selection and select this as well, we can wrap it up into a div, which is here. And now everything is in a div. And now it should work. It does.